Tonight, from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Library, in a place dedicated to the memory of this Republican icon in the 100th year after his birth.
Thank you.
We will hear from the 8 candidates who would like to claim his legacy. They're all here tonight, ready to explain and defend their positions on job creation, on spending, debt, and taxes, on America's costly dual wars, and the toxic gridlock that is Washington, D.C.
Live from the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California, the Republican candidates debate. Here now are Brian Williams and John Harris.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome. Thank you especially for joining us here in this spectacular space, this spectacular presidential library, where we are all gathered under the wings of Air Force One. We're going to get right to it tonight because we have a lot of candidates on stage, a lot of issues to talk about, and for the next hour and 45 minutes, give or take, along with my colleague and friend John Harris of the website Politico, we will be putting questions to the 8 candidates on stage tonight. By agreement, they will have 1 minute to answer and then 30 seconds for follow-up or rebuttal, as they say, at the moderator's discretion. There will be no opening or closing statements during this debate tonight. With that out of the way, we're going to start with jobs and the economy. The numbers from our new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll this week are candidly jaw-dropping. The country thinks the economy is going to get worse before it gets better. A majority of people in this country now believe the Republican policies of the first 8 years of the past decade are responsible for the economic mess we're in. And we should quickly add, a majority also don't believe the current Democratic president has set the right policies to fix the fix we're in. Question is really, who can? Governor Perry, we're going to begin with you. You're the newcomer here on stage. You probably saw this coming a mile away. You have touted your state's low taxes, the lack of regulation, tough tort reform as the recipe for job growth in the Lone Star State. But Texas ranks last among those who have completed high school. There are only 8 other states with more living in poverty. No other state has more working at or below the minimum wage. So is that the kind of answer all Americans are looking for?
Actually, what Americans are looking for is someone can get this country working again. And we put the model in place in the state of Texas. When you look at what we have done over the last decade, we created 1 million jobs in the state of Texas. At the same time, America lost 2.5 million. So I will suggest to you that Americans are focused on the right issue, and that is who on this stage can get America working, because we know for a fact the resident of the White House cannot.
But you know by now the counter argument to that is the number of low-wage jobs and the fact that unemployment is better in over half the states of the union than it is right now in Texas.
Well, the first part of that comment is incorrect, because 95% of all the jobs that we've created have been above minimum wage. So I'm proud of what we've done in the state of Texas. And for the White House or anyone else to be criticizing creation of jobs now in America, I think is a little bit hypocritical. You want to create jobs in America. You free the American entrepreneur to do what he or she does, which is risk their capital. And I'll guarantee you the entrepreneur in America, the small businessman and woman, they're looking for a president that will say, we're going to lower the tax burden on you and we're going to lower the regulation impact on you and free them to do what they do best, create jobs.
Governor Romney, over to you. You've opened the door on this topic, at least where Governor Perry is concerned. Despite your own private sector experience, as you know, Massachusetts ranked only 47th in job creation during your tenure as governor. As for your private sector experience, as Governor Perry's strategist recently put it, consisted of being, quote, a buyout specialist. Your response to that?
Well, not terribly accurate, at least with regards to the latter. And our state, I'm happy to take a look at the Massachusetts record, because when I came in as governor, we were in a real free fall. We were losing jobs every month. We had a budget that was way out of balance. So I came into office, we went to work as a team, and we were able to turn around the job losses. And at the end of 4 years, we had our unemployment rate down to 4.7%. That's a record I think the president would like to see. As a matter of fact, we created more jobs in Massachusetts than this president has created in the entire country. The policies that will get us working again as a nation are policies I understand having worked in the private sector. Look, if I'd spent my whole life in government, I would be running for president right now. My experience having started enterprises, having helped other enterprises grow and thrive, is what gives me the experience to put together a plan to help restructure the basis of America's economic foundation so we can create jobs again, good jobs, and compete with anyone in the world. This country has a bright future. Our president doesn't understand how the economy works. I do, because I've lived in it.
Time, Governor. Let's get a little bit more specific. Bain Capital, the company you helped to form, among other things, often buys up companies, strips them down, gets them ready, resells them at a net job loss to American workers.
You know, that might be how some people would like to characterize what we did, but in fact, we started businesses at Bain Capital, and when we acquired businesses, in each case we tried to make them bigger, make them more successful and grow. The idea that somehow you can strip things down and it makes them more valuable is not a real effective investment strategy. We tried to make these businesses more successful. By the way, they didn't all work. But when it was all said and done, we looked at the record we'd had during the years I was there, we added tens of thousands of jobs to the businesses we helped support. That experience, succeeding, failing, competing around the world, is what gives me the capacity to help get this economy going again.
Time, I mentioned one more reference to being a career politician. Is it a disqualification to be in government all your career?
It's a fine profession. And if someone were looking to say, how can we restructure government and which agency should report to which other agency, well, maybe that's the best background. If you're thinking about what it takes to reshape and update America's economy, and to allow us to compete with China and other nations around the world, understanding how the economy works fundamentally is a credential I think is critical.
Governor Perry, a 30-second rebuttal. You've spent your career in that fine profession of elected office. Your reaction to that?
Well, Governor Romney left the private sector, and he did a great job of creating jobs in the private sector all around the world. But the fact is, when he moved that experience to government, he had one of the lowest job creation rates in the country. So the fact is, while he had a good private sector record, his public sector record did not match that. As a matter of fact, we created more jobs in the last 3 months in Texas than he created in 4 years in Massachusetts.
Well, let's widen this out, and let's bring in Mr. Kaine on one side and
wait a second.
Senator. Go ahead, Mr. I'll give you 30 seconds.
Yeah, let's wait a second.
Oh, we could do this all evening.
Yeah, states are different. Texas is a great state. Texas has a zero income tax. Texas has a right to work state, a Republican legislature, a Republican Supreme Court. Texas has a lot of oil and gas in the ground. Those are wonderful things. But Governor Perry doesn't believe that he created those things. If he tried to say that, why, it'd be like Al Gore saying he invented the internet. Look, the reality is there are differences. There are differences between states. I came into a state that was in real trouble. Huge budget gap, losing jobs every month. We turned it around. 3 out of 4 years, we had unemployment rate below the national average. We ended up with 4.7% unemployment rate. I'm proud of what we were able to do in a tough situation.
Time, Governor Perry.
I know back and forth, but Michael Dukakis created jobs 3 times faster than you did, Mitt.
Well, as a matter of fact, George Bush and his predecessor created jobs at a faster rate than you did, Governor.
That's not correct.
Yeah, that is correct.
Nice to see everybody came prepared for tonight's conversation. As I said, I'd like to bring in both wings here, figuratively, of course, Senator Santorum and Mr. Kaine. Let's talk about this debate between public sector life's work and private sector life's work. You've spent your life's work, Mr. Kaine, in the private sector, and Senator Santorum, most of yours in the public sector. Weigh in on what you're hearing.
Yeah, I think what people are looking for is someone to get something done. And that's what I have a track record of doing in Washington, D.C., across the board, not just on economics, but on moral cultural issues, on national security issues, national defense issues. I've done things. We brought Democrats and Republicans together. I've put forward a plan because I think it's the best plan. But it's also the best plan of anybody here that actually can pass the Senate, which is probably going to have to have Democratic votes. And what I focused on was a sector of the economy that can get Democratic votes. We cut the corporate tax from 35% to 0. because we want to build the great middle of America again, get those jobs that were shipped overseas by companies that were looking to make a profit because they couldn't any longer do it here, and bring those jobs back to America. We cut that corporate rate to zero. We pass repatriation to get that resources that are sitting overseas, $1.2 trillion, and we bring them back here. We'll create jobs, and I'll get Democratic votes to pass it. We'll bring things together because of those industrial straight Democrats. And I know, because I'm from an industrial state, they will vote for this bill. You want to get something going, elect someone who knows how to get things done.
Time, Senator. Mr. Kaine, same question.
Let's cut to the chase. This is what business people do and politicians don't do. Here's how I would fix this economy. First, eliminate the current tax code. It is a drain on entrepreneurs. It's the biggest barrier that's holding this economy back. And what I would do is to propose a bold plan, which I've already released. I call it my 999 economic growth plan. Throw out the current tax code, a 9% tax on corporate income, a 9% tax on personal income, and a 9% national sales tax. If 10% is good enough for God, 9% ought to be good enough for the federal government. This would replace all federal income taxes. It'll replace all federal income taxes. It will also replace the payroll tax, so everybody gets some skin in the game, and it replaces the capital gains tax. This economy is on life support. We do not need a solution that just trims around the edges. This is a bold plan and a bold solution. Additionally, with something as simple as 999, it gives us an easy mechanism to go after help those cities that are the most blighted in terms of empowerment zones. And we can modify that very easily versus the current code.
Mr. Kaine, thank you. Governor Huntsman, as you know, Governor Romney's new economic plan calls for the U.S. government to officially label China a currency manipulator. But the Wall Street Journal editorial page says such a move would cause a trade war, perhaps. You're a former ambassador to China. You have served 4 U.S. presidents. In your view, what does Governor Romney not get about China?
He doesn't get the part that what will fix the U.S.-China relationship, realistically, is fixing our core right here at home. Because our core is weak and it is broken. And we have no leverage at the negotiating table. And I'd have to say, Mitt, now is not the time in a recession to enter a trade war. Ronald Reagan flew this plane. I was in China during the trip in 1984. He went on TV and he spoke to the Chinese people. I'd love to do that, too, in Chinese itself. And he talked in optimistic, glowing terms. And it reminds me about this, Brian. We are the most blue sky, optimistic people on earth. We're going to find solutions. And I have an offer for the 2 great governors over here. And I hate to rain on the parade of the great Lone Star governor, but as governor of Utah, we were the #1 job creator in this country during my years of service. That was 5.9% when you were creating jobs at 4.9%. And to my good friend Mitt, 47th just ain't going to cut it, my friend. Not when you can be first. We've got to remember that to beat President Obama, we have to have somebody who's been in the private sector, understands the fragility of the free market system, has been a successful governor as it relates to job creation, and knows something about this world. I've lived overseas 4 times. I've been an ambassador for my country 3 times. I think I understand that.
Governor Huntsman, time. Congresswoman Bachmann, over to you. Of all of you on this stage, you've been very vocal about wanting less regulation in American life. Which current federal regulations have been prohibitive or damaging in terms of your own small business?
Well, I think without a doubt, there's 2 that you look to. First of all are the new regulations that are just being put into place with Obamacare. As I go across the country and speak to small business people, men and women, they tell me that Obamacare is leading them to not create jobs. I spent 3 weekends going to restaurants, and I talked to a business owner who said, I have 60 people on my payroll. I have to let 10 go. At the same time, a 17-year-old girl came in and said, I'd like a job application for the summer. He said, I'm sorry, dear, I'm not hiring this summer. I'm actually letting people go. Obamacare is killing jobs. We know that from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, but I know it firsthand from speaking to people. We see it this summer. There are 47% of African American youth that are currently without jobs, 36% of Hispanic youth. I'm a mom. I've raised 5 biological kids and 23 foster kids in my home. One thing I know is that kids need jobs, and Obamacare is clearly leading to job-killing regulations, not job-creating regulations.
Congresswoman, thank you. Over to Congressman Paul. You're known as the absolutist in